Randwick Local Planning Panel, the time being 2 minutes after 1. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the various lands we occupy for this meeting, the Aboriginal people, their spirits and ancestors. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. The meeting today is to consider the determination of one development application. Panel members for this matter are myself, Lindsay Fletcher, as the independent chair, Jason Perica and Peter Romey as the independent expert members, and the community member, Kerry Hayman. This meeting is being held by public video conference due to COVID-19 precautions. As the panel chair, I'm requesting that you be considerate and respectful of each other and remain on mute until I ask you to speak. I also request that you don't interject while another person is speaking. The panel operates in terms of a code of conduct and operating guidelines, which have been modified to facilitate effective functioning during these COVID restriction periods. The temporary changes are available on the Council's website. This public meeting is being recorded and will be placed on the Council's website following the meeting. If that is of concern to you on privacy grounds, then I suggest you take it into consideration in your decision to make a public statement before the panel. In terms of the code, general declarations of interest have been provided before the meeting by all panel members, as well as a specific declaration of interest in relation to the matter being considered today. I can confirm that declarations of interest have been received. And no members of the panel have declared a conflict of interest on any of the items for determination at this or our subsequent electronic meeting. But I will just ask the panel members for the record to confirm it.
No conflicts, Jason Perica.
Yes, Peter Romey, no conflicts of interest.
No conflicts of interest, Kerry Hayman.
And likewise, myself, no conflict of interest on anyone. Those signed declarations will be available to view through the Council's website by, I believe, tomorrow afternoon. I also wish to advise that all members of the public addressing the panel must declare prior to commencing their address any political contributions or donations exceeding $1,000 made over the past 2 years to any political party or candidate who contested the last ordinary election of the Council. Our usual practice is to allow each speaker 3 minutes to present, including speakers representing community groups. There is none, but including individuals and the applicant. If you've registered to speak, your address to the panel will, as I said before, be recorded. You'll be given a warning sound about 30 seconds before your time limit, and I do have a limited discretion to allow extra time if appropriate. We'll hear first from councillors, followed by members of the public, and then from the applicant. The panel has been provided with a copy of all of the submissions received in response to the public exhibition of the application. Therefore, there's no need for speakers to repeat the points made in those submissions. I ask that each speaker be heard in silence while they're addressing the panel, and that courtesy and respect be observed throughout this meeting. There's to be no personal criticism directed at any speaker or council staff. Any such criticism would be contrary to our code of conduct and won't be accepted. Panel members may ask questions of the speakers to clarify our understanding of the points they're making. After hearing from all speakers, the panel will adjourn to debate the matter and to make its determination. If more information is required by the panel, the decision may be deferred either for a further public meeting or to be dealt with at a subsequent electronic meeting. Panel decisions and recording will be made available on the Council's website as soon as possible, usually by tomorrow. There is to be no recording of this meeting other than that official recording. So we have one item before us today at this public meeting, and that is Development Application 145 of 2021 for number 38 Dudley Street, Coogee. There's 4 people who have registered to address the panel, including the applicant. I now invite the first speaker to present. That's Councillor Kathy Nielsen, who I understand may be present on watching this meeting, but she's overseas and has left a recording. So I'll ask Mr. Coe if he wouldn't mind just playing that recording for the benefit of the panel and those watching.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to address the meeting. My name is Councillor Cathy Nielsen. I strongly object to the recommendation for approval. As the draft heritage inventory form states, the existing dwelling is a notable example of an interwar freestanding residence and has a scale, quality and response to the setting that demonstrates the historic evolution of an interwar house and contributes to the Dudley Street Heritage Conservation Area. These characteristics are clearly demonstrated in Figure 1, which shows the current view of the site from the intersection of Dudley Street and Byron Street. In my opinion, the proposed development is not consistent with the heritage objectives of the Randwick LEP and Randwick DCP. The proposal pays scant respect to the controls and objectives of either of these directives. Increasingly over recent years, Randwick Council has developed a much more proactive defence and protection of heritage, and this proposal is not an appropriate response to Council's goals for the future character of the Dudley Street Heritage Character Area or the future of Coogee. The proposed addition is located behind the primary roof line. However, it is not a sympathetic addition. The recommended guidelines say the addition should not compete with the heritage dwelling. Please look at Figure 5. Unfortunately, this proposal actually overpowers the original dwelling, and the proposed facade to Dudley Street competes in an overwhelming form, which then almost mocks the original dwelling. Figures 6 and 7 show the western elevation from Byron Street and the eastern elevation from Dudley Street, and these elevations from every direction clearly show the unsympathetic dominance of the extension. As 39 Dudley Street is a corner site at the crest of a hill and can be approached from 3 angles, surely more attention must focus on its contribution to the streetscape and the Dudley Street Heritage Conservation Area. The lamentable repetition throughout the report, Council's external heritage consultant raised no objection to the proposal from a heritage point of view, is particularly disappointing. This judgment pays inadequate attention to the key assessment issues, namely heritage, built form and amenity impacts. Most crucially, the conclusion reached in the report, in my opinion, is inappropriate. The proposal is not consistent with the relevant objectives contained within the RLEP 2012 and the relevant requirements of the Randwick DCP. I do agree that it meets the objectives of the R2 zone to continue to provide housing. Most crucially, however, the proposal does adversely affect the heritage significance of the existing dwelling within the streetscape, and the proposal should not be considered suitable for this location and is definitely not compatible with the desired future character of the locality. I urge the panel to refuse this application in its current form and that a more appropriate resolution be found so that the rear addition satisfactorily complements the character of the existing building and is therefore subservient and not visually dominating the main building, i.e. the single-storey bungalow at 39 Dudley Street, Coogee, and is sympathetic and complements the original single-storey bungalow. Appropriate recognition of the dwelling as it now stands in its prominent position just below the crest of the hill and the positive contribution it makes to the Dudley Street streetscape and the Dudley Street Heritage Conservation Area should be sympathetically embraced by the applicant, and the resultant development could therefore be an important and positive contribution to the continued evolution of Coogee for residents now and into the future. I urge the panel not to approve this DA in its current form. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor, if you're listening. Thank you, Frank, for the presentation. I don't know that it's possible anyway, but if panel members have any questions at this stage, as I say, I'm not sure that Councillor Nielsen is able to respond.
Yes.
Okay, moving to our next speaker. That's Mr. Michael Shaw. Mr. Shaw, before speaking, please state your name for the record and for the benefit of the recording, and indicate whether you have or haven't made any political donations. Mr. Shaw. Somebody, Mr. Shaw, you may be speaking, but you're on mute. You need to unmute yourself. We're still not hearing you, I'm afraid. We're actually getting two cameras from the same location. I'm wondering whether the other camera, that's better, perhaps? No? No. Is there a second camera you have there? Second? Can you unmute the other one?
Sorry, Michael. Can you try and Can you try again, Michael?
Maybe you should re-log in and.
Yeah, I'm sure there's two cameras. The same thing. That second one is from the same location. If you can revert to that.
Can I just request, Andrew, can you do us a favour? Can you say something and see if we can hear you?
Yes, can you hear me now?
We can hear you. So, Michael, that's it's a problem from your end. So, if you could assist us and try and fix the problem.
Maybe where the speaker is at the bottom, you can click that to see if it's on the right speaker. That's usually a problem.
I think he's disappeared entirely.
No, Michael's still with us.
Okay.
Yeah, Michael's back again. Sorry, Michael, we still can't hear you, but we can hear from others. So perhaps do you want to use, I can see there was another computer log into this meeting as well. Do you want to try that computer? We can't hear you still.
I wonder, Michael, we'll give you a few minutes to sort that out. We might move on to the next speaker. Otherwise, we'll come back to you and try again.
Bottom left or bottom right? There's usually a little microphone bottom left, or there's a speaker thing bottom right. Give those two a go.
In the interim, we'll move on to Mr. Aaron Naran. Sorry if I've got that pronunciation incorrect. Mr. Naran, are you there?
Yeah, no, that's okay. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Okay, that's sure. I'm sorry.
Again, name and the political donations question before you address us.
Can I just, sorry, my wife Alison Naran, who was on the call, is going to speak to this, if that's okay, please.
As well as you, or it is?
No, I just let her speak to it.
That's fine.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry,
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Alison Narang, 40 Dudley Street, Coogee, and no to the political donations question. So we would also like to object to the proposal of the new dwelling for the following reasons. Firstly, the new dwelling, the 8 to 9 metres height and grand scale of that. Sorry, just grabbing my notes here. Yeah, firstly, just due to the grand scale of the 8 to 9 metre height proposal of the new dwelling, which currently sits, I think, 6 metres above the current fence line at the back of the home. We're just concerned that this will have a gross impact on the privacy into our yard on 40 Dudley Street, as well as impacting some of the sunlight. And that's been shown in the shadow lines during winter and summer. I think in the drawings, we will have less sunlight hours during the day. Secondly, a large building of that size at the back of the block means we'll have now 2 tall adjacent buildings that will look like potentially another apartment block next door to us. So we've got one at the rear of our house, and we feel that this one next door will, at that 9 metre height, will tend to look more like an apartment building rather than a residential building. And particularly given this is a heritage regulated home, this seems to conflict with that regulation. And then thirdly, again, on the heritage restrictions in place, it just seems like, you know, there are restrictions around building at the front of the home, and these restrictions have been, in a way, just been moved to the back of the house and the rear of the home, which has impacts to us being next door and in terms of our privacy, our sunlight, and just the grand scale of the actual building itself. We're not sure of what the impact will be, but we feel there'll definitely be an impact, and we would like those impacts considered.
Thank you. Thank you, Alison. Panel members, do you have any questions for the speaker at this stage?
No.
No? Okay, thank you. We will certainly take that on board in our deliberations. I'm hoping we can go back to Mr. Shaw. And it seems we've still got nothing. I'm wondering, Frank, whether it's possible for Mr. Shaw to simply phone in and we get the video. Can we get a phone number to him, or is that already been provided?
Yes. Yeah, Michael, if you could just call, go back to the email that we've sent you. There will be a calling number where you could dial in to the meeting. I'm happy to share that information on the screen if you want to.
Or he could put a note in, put in notes his phone number and you just ring him.
It's gone, Frank. You put it up and it just went within a second.
No, I put in the calling numbers in the chat box. So, Michael, if you click on the chat on the top, you'll be able to access the number. See the chat icon on the top of the screen? I'll give you the number now. I mean, you're on your phone. Can you hear us? The number is 9161. Yeah, 9161 1238. Give me a thumbs up if you want the next.
You just go.
Talk to the phone.
Can you hear him? You got to let him in, do you?
Does it just ring?
spoke or
Probably come up as a new admitted person.
plus 5 to the morning.
Well, here's the number. So once you dial the number, you need to key in, wait for the tone and the instructions. You need to dial in this number, 4839 number.
Technology.
Here we go.
Yes.
Oh,
Excellent.
Hello, have you got me?
We do.
Finally, thank you so much. My name is Michael Shaw. I live at number 147 to 49 Byron Street, Coogee. I have made no political contributions of any sort ever, if that helps.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Okay, we've got I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners as well. So look, from our perspective, as far as privacy goes, both of our north side apartments will suffer direct sightline privacy intrusion from the balconies and windows of the top floor. If you look at document 12, long section, you can see a figure on the top balcony that demonstrates that anyone on that balcony would be able to look directly into our bedrooms and living rooms. As well as that, I think Alison's covered that in document 10A, east elevation, all of the windows on those upper stories look into the backyard of 40 Dudley Street. With light, both of the north side apartments that we have would suffer light reduction due to the large bulk and height of that building. There might be no shadow directly, but the ambient light would be profoundly affected, particularly for apartment 3, which is on the ground floor. With heritage, I think the councillor has covered that, because if you look at the eastern elevation, you can see that the great bulk of the building just dominates the original house, and if you look from the Byron Street side, it's just remarkably changed. In the Statement of Environmental Effects, Section 3, in the building envelope 3.1, it says, the proposed bulk and scale of the dwelling is consistent with the character of surrounding development, will not be visually dominant in the streetscape, and will preserve the amenity to neighbouring properties. Well, as far as light and privacy, that's, critically changed as far as we're concerned. In terms of privacy, solar access and view loss, if you look at the northern elevation in the plans, all those amenities are irrevocably changed for all of us in the building next door and the buildings around that. It says in 5.5 of the Statement of Environmental Effects, the view sharing, the proposed development will not have an adverse impact on views from the public domain or surrounding properties. As far as our apartment concerned, flat number 1, at 9.4 metres, it will radically change our view. We'll lose views of Lett and Baker Parks, of the skyline, and this building won't even take advantage of those. It just takes it away from us and gives nothing to them. So from so many aspects, we will be, the flat below us, people across the street, people next door to us, and across the other side of Dudley Street will lose a great deal of privacy, light, and amenity. We will be struggling to enjoy our home and our yards.
Thank you. I should have said earlier, the panel has had the benefit of a site visit out there, so we understand the relationship between the properties and understand the points you're making. Panel members, any questions of Mr. Shaw?
I just had one question about the configuration of your unit. So from the front of the property, is that the living dining area, and then it goes back towards bedrooms at the back?
It's the front of the building facing Byron Street has bedrooms, then bathroom, then bedroom.
So the living area is facing the side boundary, is it, towards the rear?
From the rear, from that living area, it looks straight across where that building's great bulk would be, and it's a fairly significant view that we have from there. That would be now just building, not view.
Okay. And at the very back corner, what sort of room is at the very back corner of your eastern boundary?
On the eastern boundary, on the northeast corner, that's the living room.
Right, thank you.
Okay. So, and I take it the same layout applies to Unit 3 below you?
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Any further questions, panel members? No. Thank you. So thank you for that. We will certainly take on board your comments.
I appreciate that.
I now move to the applicant, our final speaker on this item. So Mr. Andrew Kidd, are you? Yes, you're there. Again, just we know where you live. You're the owner and applicant, but if you could just confirm the question on political donations. Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Andrew Kidd. No political donations in New South Wales at all that I know of, or in Queensland. Probably more happy to hear any questions that you might want to ask of me rather than what I can say, because you can see what we're proposing pretty clearly. So I suppose it's more about answering what people might have as a question.
Okay. Panel members, any questions of Mr. Kidd at this stage?
I have a question. I wondered if you considered any different plans at all to minimise the impact on the residents around and not have the development quite as high as what's proposed.
I think when we initially bought the property in 2017, there was no restrictions on the property at all because it hadn't been listed at that stage. And I think initially we were going to remove the property and build a new property on there, which was probably a little bit different to what it is now, but similar. It's like everything that we do, I suppose you've got to comply within the law of the property at the time and what the laws are at that time. So, you know, the changes that have happened to the property, we accept that, and we're trying to work within the constraints that we have as well to build our property. I've come from a family where we've had big property, so I'm used to having a big house. So for me, that's quite normal. But I also accept everybody else has their opinions on things, and that's society that we live in. It's a democracy. So, you know, everyone's entitled to an opinion. We're trying to comply with what the law is, given today's guidelines.
Thank you.
Panel members, any further questions?
I've got a question about just some of the detailing and landscaping. So with the pool, which is roughly in like the location of the current carport, I think the setback's around 950 mils, but with the 2 block walls and the landscaping bed, there's not a great deal of room for landscaping. I would have thought that if that setback was more from the rear boundary, it'd leave more room for landscaping, which would at least help some improvement the visual privacy between your pool and neighbouring 2 units to the south. It's more a proposition to you than a question, but what is your view of an increased setback? And I'll just get my second question out of the way because it's similar. And it's also about landscaping. Where you've got that lawn area that's below the pool, between the pool and the house, the detailing's not totally clear to me in the plans, but it does show garden bed, I think, along the eastern boundary fence. So is your intention to retain the ground level along that boundary fence for a depth of around 900 and then have a level yard, or is it the intention to excavate at the fence line? So 2 questions: increasing the landscape setback from the back and side for the pool to improve the landscaping buffer between the properties, and the intention up to the eastern boundary for the rear yard.
Yeah, I think the intention is to keep the pool as far away from the fence as we can. and put landscaping around the back fence, around the side fence between both neighbours, so to provide a sound buffer and also privacy for both. We would try and bring that hill and then terrace it down so that the pool will be probably more level with the house rather than with the back of the yard, and try and move that pool, yes, for sure, away from the backyard and more towards the Byron Street side of the property, more rather than the adjoining 40 Dudley Street property. Again, hoping to keep trees all the way along that for privacy for both parties, and we're certainly mindful everyone has privacy concerns, so we're not trying to destroy or remove as much of that as we can. That answers your question?
So you're not necessarily adverse to providing more landscaping around the pool at the rear. And in terms of the garden area along the fence to the east, next to number 40, so is the intention there to keep that level with the fence and not to dig down to the fence level? Is that, what are you proposing there? 'Cause it's not clear, it's on the plan.
To be honest, I think that's still not 100% clear for us either, but the intent is, from our point of view, is to certainly have landscaping right around the L shape of that back fence and to provide privacy for both parties. So, you know, if you're in the backyard next door, for instance, with our neighbours there, they do have their privacy similar to what it is now. So we're not going to be looking at each other if that's not what the intent is.
Right, and there is some trees, I think there's a crepe myrtle there, but I imagine in terms of retaining water movement between properties and landscaping, it would be better to retain the soil levels as they are and as they exist next to that boundary. I think that would work better for privacy and landscaping, I guess, is where I'm going. Yeah,
from what I understand from one of the engineers we spoke to, they want to try and put a stronger retaining wall back further, so that that's keeping the land from moving forward and also supporting the property behind us. But again, that's more of an engineering concern more than a visual concern that we'll see above the ground.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from panel members?
Well, just Mr. Kidd, thank you. A supplementary question to my colleagues, and that's on that eastern side where you're talking about the idea that you said you're amenable to having, where you're actually showing garden there. You've shown a set of steps against or almost against that eastern boundary, which provides access along the side of the house to that rear lawn area, rear garden area. Are they exist? I can't recall those steps existing.
No, there's no steps in the backyard apart from coming down from the garage. There's about 3 or 4 stairs there now.
Seen them.
But that where the garage now would be probably more terraced garden area, and then the pool sort of in front of that is what the envisage would be.
Okay, so you need access to that rear area along that boundary, but at the same time you're amenable to having some vegetation, a vegetated buffer along there.
For sure, I think the intent would be to walking from the back of the house out and then to the pool, and then if we went up a little bit higher, you could walk up into the back area there. At present, as you can see from the back of the yard, it's pretty much unusable because of the slope of the hill. So we'd like to try and terrace it more so we can actually gain more access and use to the back of the yard. At present, it's very hard to even sit in there without falling down the hill.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay. I only had one question. Had 3 previous speakers urging us not to adopt the recommendation, but the recommendation from the staff is for a conditional approval. And I just wanted to give you the opportunity, if there were any of those recommended conditions that were of concern to you, now's your opportunity to say so.
So what was the conditions that were there?
There's a whole string of recommended conditions of approval that form part of the assessment report. Have you not had an opportunity to go through those?
I don't think we've had nothing come back from anybody.
Okay. Well,
so I was away last week overseas, but what I saw come back was just a letter of approval for the development application. But that's our first response that I'm personally aware of that's come back.
Okay, well, there's a recommendation that forms part of the report, which sets out a number of conditions. But if you haven't seen them, clearly you can't.
Been on the website last week.
Yeah.
Can you share those conditions with the rest of the group, or do those conditions include anything that's been discussed today?
Yes, there's conditions, for example, dealing with privacy. There's conditions dealing with landscaping. There's a whole range of conditions there to address some of the concerns. But we obviously can't take that any further if the applicant hasn't had an opportunity to review them.
Usually there'd be a link or there'd be a notice that it's going to the panel meeting on the website. If you go to the council's website, even if you put in local planning panel Randwick, it'll come to the agenda. You can look at the report and all the conditions. It's on publicly available for last week.
They need to clarify that it's not approved yet.
Yeah. Just so you're clear, Mr. Kidd, the application hasn't yet been determined. That's our role, and we will be debating that shortly. So there has been no approval given at this stage for the development. That's the matter that we're assessing and considering.
Okay.
The assessment report and the conditions is on the website. That's that recommendation we're considering.
Yeah, and that's available not just to the applicant, obviously, it's available to all the objectors to review as well.
So can I ask a question about that? I was just looking at where your double garage is to the street and the way the levels will work. So it's, from my look at it, you'd need to regrade all of that footpath pretty well up to the corner steps to make the levels work for the footpath. Is that what you're intending to do?
To be honest, that's more of an engineering question than what my knowledge entails, but it's got to be whatever it is to make it compliant for the council.
Okay.
Yeah.
They did ask us to move the drain from where it is a little bit further up the hill. That was probably the one thing that I am aware of.
Mr. Kidd, sorry to prolong this, but I have a supplementary question, which is on your documentation, the DA documentation, there's only one, well, actually, there's no cross sections. There's a long section, there's no cross sections. In the addition to the front of the house, where you're inserting a new floor level, which contains bedroom 2 and bedroom 3. Yeah. Both of those bedrooms are provided with access to daylight by means of, I'm known to call them dormers because they're not really, but nevertheless, let's just go with that. We don't have a cross section through there, which would have been useful. Do you happen to know what the height of the sill of those dormers are? Are they designed to be below eye level? Actually, we can work that out from the, yeah, it looks like about a metre.
We can probably scale it.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know the exact height, but I would have thought that'd be the height around about a desk height. So if you're sitting there at the desk or a cabinet, you could see out the window, for instance.
Yeah, okay, right. It appears to be about 1200, I'd say. All right.
Yeah, I would think about that height.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, everybody. We've now heard from all of the registered speakers, so I thank you all for your assistance.
Thank you.
In accordance with the panel guidelines, the public meeting will now be closed. We'll move to a closed meeting to deliberate on this, and we've got a number of other matters to be determined electronically. The outcome from voting and determination will be made available through the website, either late tonight or tomorrow. And as I've said a number of times, a recording of this public meeting will also be available through the council's website. I also want to thank council staff for their assistance on getting some of the speakers online with today's meeting. So the time being 1:41, I now declare the meeting closed, and again thank everybody for their attendance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.